connection that we can actually see the book. Before I left for Turkey, the day before I left, I got a call from my bank. Your debit card has been compromised. Someone tried to illegally use it on the internet, so we've canceled your card. We'll send you another one. But I'm leaving tomorrow for Turkey. I need my card today. Can I come into the bank and you give me a card? And they said no. It takes 7 to 10 days. So I transferred my money to a second bank, for which I also had a debit card. And the first day that I was in Turkey, when I went to get cash, I lost the card, left it in the machine, didn't know it until we got to Yerevan, and ran out of money and had no debit card. Now I know, by the way, in case you want to travel to Yerevan, they will not cash an American check in any bank in Turkey. Even if you have a passport, a visa, a credit card, they will not give you a cash advance on a credit card in Yerevan unless you have a personal identification number, which I didn't for the credit card. So it was a challenge getting out of the country of Armenia and back into Turkey. When we got back into Turkey, Salih, my friend, said, "David, I have been a tour guide for over 30 years and never ever have I been on a trip where so many things went wrong." And I thought, that's a good thing. Because if this was not something worth pursuing, the enemy wouldn't care. And there wouldn't be any obstacles on our way. We would just meet the man, and the information that he had was worth it. I think in the church that we are at a significant crossroads in history. I had a lot of things to show you about the schools and education, and I'm not going to do that because we're running late on time. I want to leave some time for questions. But we're at a place in time in the church, and I don't say this to denigrate any particular denomination or any particular church. I believe that many pastors simply are not educated in these areas. But in the schools, in the high schools, in the junior highs, in the elementary schools, in the kindergartens, in the universities, teachers are not afraid to tell kids, we know the truth. We know the truth about the Big Bang. It happened 13.6 billion years ago. Now, they might quibble about that in the astronomy journals, 10 billion, 20 billion, somewhere in between. But in the schools, they don't have any problem saying, we know the truth. We know how old the universe is. We know that it began in the Big Bang. I just helped to edit a biology course for a Christian school 2 weeks ago, and in the course, it had links that created to outside websites, and you would click on the link and it would go to the website and tell you that you began as a single-celled organism 3.8 billion years ago. And all of life on Earth stems from that single cell. They can't tell you how that single cell came about, how incredibly complex and well-designed that cell is. We can't, in a laboratory, with all of our technology, with all of our computer savvy, we can't make a single-celled organism. But they will tell you in the textbooks that we know that it happened 3.8 billion years ago. They don't have any problem telling kids that we know you evolved from ape-like creatures that went before you, that birds came from reptiles over millions and millions of years of time. But in many of the churches where I have been, I've been told, we can't have you present a one-sided picture of creation, and we can't have you telling people that it happened 6,000 years ago, because there are Christians that believe it happened millions or billions of years ago. So we're at a place in the church where the church no longer is able to tell young people that we know the truth, but the world does. If you wanted to study geology or anthropology or archaeology or history, where would you go? You would go to the universities or to the secular schools, but you wouldn't go to the church to learn about geology. So what I have found is in the church we have separated a spiritual story from reality. And we send our kids to Sunday school and they learn the story of Noah's Ark and they learn a spiritual lesson, but they don't know the reality of the geological record of the flood. They don't know paleontology or anthropology or archaeology or even history. So we've separated the church to say, we're going to teach you the spiritual lessons and we're going to let the schools teach you all the rest. And here's what I believe the Lord spoke to me, that the evolution theory took root in America not because science succeeded in establishing it, but because the church failed to oppose it. And one of the reasons, or one of the primary reasons that I believe God involved me in the search for Noah's Ark, my passion was to see the veracity of God's Word restored to the church. I have been invited to speak in churches, and they have told me, we don't want you to speak against evolution because you might offend some in our congregation. Where does that leave us? What if your church believes in healing and believes that God is still involved in the healing process, but there are people that don't believe it? Do you now leave healing out of the picture because you don't want to offend anyone? I was speaking in the Creation Club at Maranatha, and I told the story of a man named Ronald Coyne. Ronald Coyne lives in Tulsa. I don't know if he's still alive, but when I was in college, I met him. Ronald Coyne, as a young boy, was running through the field, and he fell, and a wire pierced his eye. And the vitreous humor leaked out. By the time they got him to the hospital, they said, there's nothing we can do. They surgically removed his eye. When the eye socket healed, eventually they fitted him with a prosthetic eye. Now the prosthetic eye is opaque. You can't see through it because it's designed to look like the normal eye. And he couldn't move it back and forth because it's not attached. But God healed Ronald Coyne, and he could see through his plastic eye. And what he thought was incredible, what most people thought was incredible, he would bandage up his eye, put a patch over it, wrap his head with tape, and then he would take out the eye, put it in his pocket, and he could read anything you gave to him. He told me what I was wearing. He came and he looked at me, and I realized I'm looking into his empty eye socket, and I think, oh my gosh, he's looking at me. There was a show called That's Incredible. I don't know if you remember, from the 1970s. They had him on there, and they went through all the process of having him examined by a doctor, had him read eye charts with his good eye covered and his plastic eye missing. But to me, what was incredible, and to what he said, was the plastic eye in his pocket, he couldn't see through with his good eye. But he put it back in his empty socket, and he could still see. Now that's incredible. That's like the miraculous hand of God every day on a daily basis. Kind of like the Israelites in the wilderness when they had manna every day that they needed it. And then on the Sabbath day there was no manna, but the day before they had double and it didn't rot. But every other day they tried to collect double, it rotted. They saw the sustaining hand of God every day. Now I told that story in Creation Club, and I remember one of my students, he said, up until this point I was tracking. That's just too bizarre. But the next day I came to school, and he came running over and he gave me a big hug. Now I thought there was a joke involved in this, and he stuck something on my back. But he just gave me a hug, and he had tears in his eyes. He went, Mr. Larsen, I went home last night, and for the first time I thought, I don't believe what he told me today. Everything else was fine, but until that point, I went to bed and I thought, God, if you're that God, if you could heal me, then heal my knees. And no one prayed for him, no one touched him, and God healed his knees in his room in the middle of the night. And he started jumping up, and he ran around the house, he woke his parents up, and he told them, my knees were healed.